Short stream here in just a second. Doop-a-doop. I'm going to take the dog outside real quick and we'll get started. Also, we need to pull up chat. So we'll be doing that. Okey-dokey. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Neither is that. There we go. All right. All right. Go lay down. Oh, go lay down. had to do stuff. What's up, y'all? We are gonna be watching some episodes of G4 Icons, reacting to it, commentating on it, hanging out, having a good time. Before I do that, though, give me a minute. Let me go ahead and make sure that all sound levels are good. All sound levels seem to be good. Okay. And before we get started, let me actually go and share the stream, let people know we're here. Also, if you're here, like the stream. That helps us out a ton. Bear with me here, y'all. I know we're a little late getting started today. For whatever reason, VTube Studio just kind of wants to be a butt sometimes. I don't know what the deal is. It just, that is what it do. That is, in fact, what it do.
On the heels of a doomed console,
it was a really crucial time for Sega.
the dream was born.
And they really wanted to get back into the race, so they put out the Dreamcast.
It survived an executive shakeup
So we have partying other ways, and I love the company.
and saved a company.
Retailers started calling us in week 2 or 3 saying, we're out of stock, we're out of stock, we have to have more hardware, people are banging down our doors.
But the dream was short-lived.
And then it just stopped. I mean, it was just silent. Dreamcast sat on store shelves.
This is the story of the Sega Dreamcast.
Here is a system that was ahead of its time.
In November of
Tell me how we're doing, everybody.
Sega launches its Sega Saturn in Japan.
At the time of conception, it was going to be basically just a really souped-up 2D machine.
Oh man, I'd love to get my hands on a Sega Saturn, y'all. There's gems there. There's a lot of really good games. Now, granted, there are a lot of really good games that are also available for other systems. But there's, some really good stuff there, like Knights, obviously. And again, a lot of it you can play on Steam. But I feel that Saturn was really not really well explored as far as what it could do. And that's partially because it was such a chore to develop for. And it was really meant to be like an arcade in the home experience, like the Neo Geo.
A little bit of hardware.
Anyway.
Once PlayStation announced their specs, it was going to be this full 3D machine. I think they went in there and kind of retooled it in a hurry, and it probably wasn't as efficient or as powerful as it probably should have been.
You made it this far, huh?
It actually went quite well in Japan, and Saturn had a long lifespan in Japan.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Thanks to strong arcade ports like Sega's Virtua Fighter series, the Saturn sells 5.8 million units in 3 years.
In Japan, Virtua Fighter is a phenomenon.
Oh, yeah.
Beyond anything we could even compare it to in the United States. I mean, nothing compares to how big it is there. And the idea of bringing that home and being able to play was a very bold, intelligent move on their part. In Japan at this point, the arcades were still hot. The arcades have been dead for 10 years here in America, but in Japan,
Oh, that's true.
Arcade hit meant something. So Saturn had an arcade hit.
The Saturn does not catch on outside of Japan, and is quickly eclipsed by Sony's PlayStation.
Yeah, that's fair.
Launched before PlayStation.
PlayStation was awesome.
1995, which was the wrong time to launch. Also, a very expensive price point. I believe it launched at $399.
Oh, yeah, no.
And did not have very good games. They were not that fun to play. As we all know, if you want to play a game, you want to have fun.
They were looking to be like this kind of hardcore gamers machine with these ports of the arcade games, whereas Sony came in with a completely different approach. You know, they wanted this to be a games machine for everybody, and they kind of really shifted the perception of everybody, of the consumers, towards what a game machine is.
I think for the people who purchased Saturn, they were quite satisfied with the games that they got. There were some wonderful gameplay experiences.
Oh, yeah, Panzer Dragoon.
Available elsewhere, so it was a purchase that ended up being.
Never really got into that series, but it looks cool.
Saturn because they felt like they could get 10 years worth of gameplay out of it with sufficient gameplay innovation over that period of time. I would say those people were probably disappointed.
The Sega Saturn was very successful with the hardcore gamer crowd, and with the broader range crowd, it wasn't quite as popular, but it's still a big hit.
Sega was in a really, really tough position in that they had extended themselves, they had overextended themselves. There was a time prior to Dreamcast, just prior to Dreamcast really, as Saturn was coming out, where Sega had the Saturn. In parts of the world they were still selling the Master System. They had Pico, they had 32X, they had Genesis, they had Game Gear, they had Nomad. So yeah, that's 7 systems.
Well, okay. In the parts of the world where they were selling the Master System still, that's because you couldn't get anything else in there. Like, they were like tariffs and embargoes and shit. Like, I did an episode about this regarding like gaming in Brazil. And yeah, it's kind of that story where you couldn't get a lot of stuff there in a lot of the Latin American countries. And so yeah, a lot of the older systems found new lives or second life in the Latin American market, which is really cool because, like we know now, the Model 3 Genesis was created by Tectoy. So
Currently, they had really gotten themselves into a rut. They had completely botched the Saturn launch in North America.
I believe if we look at Saturn, it was a system that shouldn't have been launched. It was too difficult to develop for. Therefore, the games were not fun and the games weren't there. This is not about hardware. This is about software. The software has always driven hardware. If you don't have the software, the hardware will fail.
Saturn's failure causes Sega to lose $267.9 million and lay off 30% of its workforce.
There was all of a sudden a couple of years where they didn't have any kind of a console at all. And since Sega was very much a hardware-specific company, that was a very big problem.
Sega's solution is to begin work on a brand new console, and this time, the Japanese gaming giant is determined to learn from its past mistakes.
Well, we really had to reestablish ourselves as a company with all the retailers and gain the consumer confidence back because of the failures that Sega had.
Sega hopes to win back the consumer confidence it had lost and prepares a surprise announcement for E3 in 1998.
Then they had a few closed-door meetings. You had to sign your life away on this NDA. You, at pain of death, you could not tell people what you saw for months. By the second or third day of the show, I'd forgotten all about those little NDA things, those non-disclosure agreements that I had signed. I needed to write something for MSNBC about what I had seen at the show, and so I wrote all about this great demonstration I had of Dreamcast behind closed doors. And then I woke up at 6 in the morning and realized what I had done, and called MSNBC and said, "No, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off, please." And they took it off, and of course Sega was furious. They were livid. The happy ending to the story was that my ratings on that particular article were so bad that Sega no longer cared. But granted, it only ran for 3 hours.
Codenamed the Katana. This new system would later be known as the Dreamcast.
I was completely excited at the prospect of a next generation platform from Sega because it was clear that we had struggle with Saturn.
The Sega Saturn was a miserable failure for Sega, and they really wanted to get back into the race. So they put out the Dreamcast way before any of these next generation systems came out.
Yep.
Would gamers trust Sega?
They were the
after all
first
of their
Generation
past
6
failures?
system.
Definitely what Sega was trying to incorporate into the Dreamcast, they learned from the Saturn, was a broader audience. They were trying to make it a gamer machine for everybody, but they were really trying to shift gears there. It was a really crucial time for Sega.
But it was also clear that the company had every intent of rejoining the battle, and we were all ready to rejoin the battle.
On November 27, 1998, the Dreamcast is made a reality to the Japanese gaming public.
One of the key events for all game consoles is the Japanese launch. The Japanese launches up to this point were something big. I mean, really big. The Japanese government requested companies to not launch their game systems during weekdays because it cut down on national productivity.
Oh, yeah,
Trade
that makes
being
sense.
slowed down as they go by Akihabara, which is the electric town in Tokyo.
Japanese people loved good graphics. At that time, Dreamcast was very great graphics, so everyone was excited about it.
But the launch is not without its problems. Due to manufacturing glitches, Sega fails to meet shipping goals for the console.
So with Dreamcast, they missed their first window of opportunity because NEC was making their graphics chip, and there weren't enough available for a full launch. So
Just making me want to hook up my old Dreamcast.
The image of the time of the Sega Dreamcast, I think, with the Japanese public was looks like maybe Sega's turning over a new leaf. It was a new feeling for Sega. I think they really had a successful job of arousing interest in the public and showing that they were maybe ready to start something really strong here.
It was Sega's next big console after the Sega Saturn. The Sega Saturn was a miserable failure for Sega, and they really wanted to get back into the race. So they put out the Dreamcast way before any of these next generation systems came out.
With the US launch still more than a year away, Sega president Bernie Stolar takes note of the mistakes made by his Japanese partners.
And I was interested in rebuilding Sega, re-establishing the strength that it once had, both in software and hardware, and rebuild a team that became a world-class team to help drive an organization. And that's what I wanted to do, and I believe that the team did that. It's not about one individual, it's about a team.
what I can say about Bernie Stolar is that he did a lot of things really, really right. You compare the Japanese launch of Dreamcast to the US launch of Dreamcast, and Bernie had the publicity in place. He
Yep.
had the enthusiasts really rallied so that they were excited.
While Sega is poised to take the US by storm, Sony is set to shake up the video game world.
At every moment with Dreamcast, it was always kind of threatened by the looming shadow of this unshown thing. The shadow of PlayStation 2 always loomed large over it.
At the beginning, everyone was very excited and behind the Sega Dreamcast, but as time went on, more and more focus shifted towards the PlayStation 2.
Then, as early as March in 1999, just really a couple months later, Ken Kutaragi unveiled PlayStation 2. And it was so much more powerful than Dreamcast, and could do so much more than Dreamcast.
Sony, frankly, was very effective in holding out that promise to gamers. I think to a certain extent they succeeded in convincing their existing PlayStation 1 audience not to get a Dreamcast and to wait until this mythical new system was going to appear.
The Dreamcast excites American gamers, with pre-orders for the console reaching 300,000, shattering the record of 100,000 set by the PlayStation in 1995.
We really had to reestablish ourselves as a company and gain the community confidence back.
They were very, very aggressive, pushing the whole idea of Dreamcast. There was a lot of excitement about the Sega name at that point.
Less than 1 month before the launch of the Dreamcast, the team at Sega is dealt an unexpected blow.
Right before the day itself, Bernie was fired from Sega.
I didn't agree with who was there that then became my boss, Mr. Okawa. So we had a parting of the ways, and I left the company. unfortunate, but the team that I had built and the team that had really helped build the launch, they were in place. They were ready to go. They were ready to drive the product. And they did.
The Dreamcast juggernaut could not be derailed, and the system launched in the US on September 9th, 1999 for $199.
I think what made the Dreamcast so great are really the games. Right from
Dude,
launch,
yes.
it had a couple really great games. It had Soul Calibur. Sonic Adventure was really popular.
Yeah.
It had great football games with Sega's NFL 2K series. One of the other things that made the Dreamcast so great is the online feature. Out of the box, this came with a modem, this system. Immediately, you could be getting on and playing against other people across the country, and that was a real novelty back then.
Just 4 days after the US launch, Sega reports selling 372,000 Dreamcasts and bringing in over $132 million.
The launch was successful. Sega was successful. And it regained the confidence of both the retail community and the consumer.
We knew the Dreamcast was a tremendously successful launch when retailers started calling us in week
Yeah.
2 saying, we're out of stock, we're out of stock, we have to have more hardware, we have to have hardware, people are banging down our doors.
Sega tried to do all the things that they had done wrong with Saturn, right with Dreamcast. Saturn was very miserable to program. Dreamcast was a snap to program. Saturn had a very old-fashioned controller. It was really just a Genesis controller, still with the kidney bean shape. Dreamcast had a newfangled controller. They really looked and tried to do everything different. And that side of things was really good.
But would it be good enough to hold off the PlayStation 2? On October 26th of 2000, the heavily hyped PlayStation 2 is unleashed on the masses.
For the first year of PlayStation 2, the biggest hit on PlayStation 2 was Matrix. People were watching the movie. They weren't playing the game.
Yep.
PlayStation 2 sparked the DVD market in Japan.
Yes,
DVD
it well
caught on in Japan.
here in the U.S. also. The PlayStation 2 was a lot of people's first DVD player. You go into stores and you see movies on DVD being played, not on a DVD player, PS2. Because it wasn't just a DVD player. Obviously, it was a CD player. It was a game console for PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. So you could do so. It was one of the first real big. This isn't just a game console; it's a multimedia machine type consoles.
And before PlayStation 2, you'd walk through Akihabara and there'd be game stores every place. After PlayStation 2, you'd walk through Akihabara and you'd see DVD stores. And if you walked into these DVD stores, they were demonstrating movies using PlayStation 2.
The Dreamcast would have been a bigger player, in my opinion, that had it had a DVD player installed from the get-go.
Sega looked over at
That would have made it so much
and they
more
realized
expensive,
they
though.
Lost Japan. There was no resurrecting Japan. They might have been able to hold Japan if they'd had a DVD player in there, because in the early days for PlayStation 2, PlayStation 2 was the cheapest DVD player in Japan, and if they had had that distinction, they might have been able to hold on.
PlayStation 2 sales hit $165 million in its first 3 days. And the
Damn.
Dreamcast suffers.
I mean, it was just silent. Dreamcast sat on store shelves. No games did that well again. Even good games just kind of sat there and people took them, but it was just somebody turned off the light.
It was a big hit with gamers, but unfortunately it wasn't really, commercially viable. It came at a sort of awkward time and right before the release of PlayStation 2. So unfortunately it didn't sort of build the fan base that it could have.
Sega, you've got to understand, is hemorrhaging money as a company. They realized that if they could sell 4 to 5 million units worldwide, that they could still have a profitable market. They could last a little longer.
Sega catches a break in December of 2000 2000, when Sony can only ship half as many PS2s as it planned for the holiday season.
We had a crew of people who were very into being the underdog.
I'll allow you to die like a warrior.
Oddly enough, becoming the underdog almost galvanized us further. Really brought us together as a team because we knew exactly what we had to do.
And they thought, we dropped our price, we come out aggressive with all kinds of things, including you could have a free Dreamcast. And it wasn't enough. They pushed. And at the end of Christmas, they hadn't made headway.
What are you saying?
Rumors started coming out that Sega was no longer manufacturing Dreamcast.
No!
And I remember interviewing Charlie Bell. I said, the rumor is that you're going to discontinue. And he said, no, that's not true. And I said, are you manufacturing them now? And he said, no. And I said, how much inventory do you have? And it turned out that there was more inventory in the channel and in their warehouses than there was sold.
Dang.
And I said, okay, that doesn't look good. Charlie, when will you start manufacturing again? And that was when Charlie said, we have no plan to start manufacturing again. And that was the first time Sega came out and officially announced that, we've discontinued.
It was a real crush to the egos of everybody. I mean, I remember I was in the meeting where we were told that Dreamcast was not going to continue, and everyone just was silent. Everyone was just speechless. No one said a thing. It was just very heavy, very oppressive. I don't know that Sega could have done anything differently to really save the Dreamcast. The biggest nail in their coffin was Sony really pushing the PlayStation 2.
I don't know about all that.
Around the world. Sega announces that they are going to create games for all consoles.
I think it was a time where Sega really had to address itself and say, are we going to now just be a software company? And if we are going to be a software company, is the team that we have here going to be one of the best organizations to build great software? Because that's going to have to be our focus.
Come on, let's begin.
And that's going to have to be our drive. And that's how we're going to be able to survive.
So when Sega said that they would no longer be hardware specific, there was a lot of excitement. They really were the belle of the ball. Microsoft, for their Xbox console, got Sega to promise them Panzer Dragoon. A beautiful game. But Sony turned around and they had the Virtua Fighter series locked up for themselves. That was the arcade hit, and that was the bigger seller. Especially in Japan,
I was about to say in Japan, yeah, but here people don't really care about Virtua Fighter.
There was a very committed Sega fan base right up till the end of Dreamcast that very much appreciated the Sega style of gameplay. As we transitioned from a hardware company pushing the Dreamcast platform to a software developer, we were able to successfully convert the Sega fan base to other hardware platforms via our games. We were able to explain to gamers, you can still have your Jet Grind radio, but it's just going to happen on these other platforms, but we promise you it'll be the same exact wonderful gameplay experience. And Sega gamers came along with us.
But the Dreamcast will live on in gamers' hearts and memories.
That's facts.
If you picked up a Dreamcast, you were holding something that felt like a gamer's machine. It felt like it was made for games.
Without a doubt, the Dreamcast showed the world that online gaming was possible and fun and interesting on console. So there's no question, with respect to online games, the Dreamcast will be remembered forever.
Dreamcast is something special, mostly because, it came from Sega. This were the games that really were released with it, especially at the beginning, were some of the best games of the last generation, or even this one.
That's facts.
I've been in this industry a long time. I've seen a lot of hardware companies come and go. Dreamcast will always have a position in this industry from a historic standpoint. Because it did so well in the first 2 years that it was there, it really established itself.
Here was a system that was ahead of its time. People who owned a Dreamcast in 2000 and 2001 were probably a lot happier than people who owned a PlayStation 2. Because because there were a lot of great games for Dreamcast.
That's true.
I think that it will go down in history as one of the more desirable systems.
Oh yeah, dude. Like, to this day, people who love Dreamcast freaking love Dreamcast. People still make games for it. That's how you know it was a good console. If people to this day still make games for it, did something right. I'll take a quick break. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. Just want to get a drink. And now we're moving on to the Xbox.
This is the story of a group of friends.
I took it to my friend's cabin at like 2 a.m. Called him up at home. Said, we gotta make a game console.
Nah.
Or Shane's box.
Yeah. You ever, Matt, you ever be like that though? Like, you get a fucking idea late at night and you call up your dude and you're like, yo, we gotta do a thing. And he's like, oh god. And then you get into nonsense and have an adventure. Those are the best times, man. Those are the best times. The very best times.
Great.
Hell yeah. Don't be a nerd. Let's make a game console.
In $1 billion industry.
With Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer is saying, we better get this right, otherwise it could potentially really screw up the industry. Xbox was the sexiest thing any Microsoft employee had ever heard of, ever at the company they all wanted to work on.
This is it. We're not looking back.
So where do you put my Xbox?
Oh, sorry, guys. I know I keep getting up and down, but the reason for that is I gotta take care of my dog. She's a needy, needy pupper dog. Xbox. I love the Xbox, man. Like, for real.
Begins with the driving force behind it, Seamus Blackley.
Xbox, man, the original, like the OG Xbox. In all ways that matter, it was basically the Dreamcast 2. I can't remember the name of it. There's a platform that Sega uses for their arcade hardware that's just a modified Xbox. Like, you see a lot of the Dreamcast DNA in the Xbox. And there's a lot of Xbox and Dreamcast. You remember it ran off of Windows CE.
Seamus grows up in New Mexico and early on develops an interest in the world of gaming.
I can remember very distinctly the feeling of playing my Atari 2600 and not really wanting to finish the games or play them so much, but really wanting to take that excitement I felt and like write my own games. And when I got my Apple, my mom likes to tell a story. When they gave me the Apple II for Christmas, I stayed up for 72 hours straight. The moment they gave it to me, plugged into the TV, and I actually fell asleep like on it the first night because I was so desperate to write a game.
Despite his love for games, his career steers him into another direction.
I was working as a physicist, and I was doing high energy physics, and there was this giant particle accelerator that was going to be built in Texas called the Superconducting Supercollider.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
And that was my future, and everybody else's future who was doing experimental high energy physics in the U.S. at the time. That was what it was about. And it got canceled. They canceled by
Fucking
Congress.
here in Texas, a bunch of fucking retards.
Seamus applies for a job posting on campus.
It was Looking Glass Technologies. They needed somebody to rewrite a car physics model for a car and driver game. So I went over there and met all the guys working on Ultima Underworld and Ned Lerner, who was an idol.
Hey, what's good, Jello? Good to see you, man.
And
That's why I do this, actually. On Mondays, I do this stream. On TikTok, I used to do something called Monday Movie Nights, where I would live stream on TikTok and we would watch like some of my old VHS tapes on my CRT television. And I did that on Mondays, and it's for the same reason I do this on Mondays. I set it up to make Mondays suck less. Because, you know, the weekend just ended. Bummer, right? But when you're doing something like this, you have a little something to look forward to on Monday, you know. So maybe it doesn't suck so hard. But it's good to see you, man. Welcome.
AI stuff, and Flight Unlimited, and Underworld 2, and all that stuff.
But new management flies into a completely different direction.
So, you know, these game guys, you know, we're going to bring in a professional management team. And at the time I was saying, look, we need to do combat version of Flight Unlimited. I really want to do that. And the management decided that instead they wanted to compete with Microsoft Flight Simulator. So I started looking for a job, and I eventually got recruited to go work at DreamWorks.
Awesome.
DreamWorks. Seamus goes to work on a game based on the smash hit movie Jurassic Park by Steven Spielberg. The future looks bright for Seamus, but there are storm clouds on the horizon.
So there, I did a bunch of stuff, culminating in working on Trespasser. Quite intelligent. Screwed that up pretty well, and you know, didn't do a lot of things that I know I would I want to do today.
I can do this.
is released in 1998, and its flaws are obvious. Critics and fans are disappointed, and Seamus loses faith in himself.
Tape left.
After Trespasser, I got death threats.
Heavier than I thought.
There was a huge backlash. It was the very dawn of fan sites on the internet. It was the dawn of the sort of culture of first-person shooters, and everybody expected it to be a shooter. First of all, they expected it to be finished, which it wasn't. But they expected it to be a shooter, and it wasn't. It was really different. So people were really pissed off. People really hated that game. And there were some people who really loved it. And there were a lot of people who just hated it, and just, I figured that my career was over. It really did. It was an incredibly painful time.
And a turning point. Seamus decides to make a change and heads north.
And I thought I'd just go hide at Microsoft for a while. I chose a program manager job in the graphics division because I just wanted to get away from games.
But he's not able to resist games for long. In 1999, Sony announces the release of their newest console, the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
Enterprising Seamus has an idea.
Well, there were rumors of Sony, releasing this.
Dude, okay, so think about it. He gets the idea in 1999, and the Xbox comes out like 2-3 years later. 2-3 years to develop a game console that, whose sequels are still coming out to this day. Like, god dang, dude.
The version of the PlayStation.
Hey, what's up, Corey? How we doing?
And, I've been doing 3D for a long time, and 3D on the PC is unstoppable. I mean, it's just continuously innovating, continuously feeding back on itself, continuously progressing, and it just seemed ludicrous to me. It became clear to me that, very few companies in the world could do something as bold as take on Sony, and Microsoft was one of them. So it became incredibly clear to the other guys that I talked to about it that we had an opportunity to make a game console which had the business potential of a game console, but had the tool support and the power for artists of the PC and of the sort of traditional offline rendering community. And that was really the spark.
And at 35,000 feet in the air, Seamus is inspired.
So, one night, for whatever reason, I was sitting on an airplane and I got hit by cosmic radiation.
Yeah.
And I wrote this thing up and I took it to my friend Kevin at like 2 a.m. after I landed. I called him up at home. I said, we gotta make a game console.
Kevin Bacchus, a project manager at DirectX, sees the potential.
Initially, there were really 4 of us working on Xbox. Seamus, myself, Otto Burkus, who ran the graphics development for DirectX, and Ted Hasse, who was my boss, who was in charge of evangelism for DirectX. We obviously went and talked to Ed Fries extensively about what his thoughts would be.
Ed Fries, the man in charge of the games division at Microsoft, is immediately impressed.
They approached me and said, hey, if we made this console, would you support us? Would you help us get it through upper management? Would you help make the games for us? They're pretty persuasive. They had a plan that I thought was pretty exciting.
The group embarks on a crusade to bring the console to the masses.
We had day jobs. We had stuff we were supposed to be doing, right? And we just weren't doing it, right? We were inviting ourselves to meetings. And we thought, God, if they're making a device for the home, it has to be Xbox. It has to be this thing we're thinking of, which at the time we were calling the Direct Xbox, which is how we got the name Xbox.
The group pushes the idea up through the ranks at Microsoft, eventually reaching the top. Mr. Bill Gates.
The first time that we talked to Bill Gates about Xbox, I think he was immediately very taken by the opportunity, by the chance to create something that was technologically superior to anything that was out there, and really focus on a single task.
Bill got it right away. Bill's a very sharp guy.
So he became one of our biggest allies from the beginning.
It was just awesome. It was the most awesome sort of support ever. And they just kept on pushing it.
Bill Gates sends a memo endorsing the Xbox project. For Seamus, Kevin, and Ed, the moment of truth finally arrives.
We better get this right, otherwise it could potentially really screw up the industry.
By 1999, the Xbox is a legitimate project. Software giant Microsoft oversees a team to oversee key elements of the Xbox production.
Jay Aller came on board to run development efforts to create the operating system for the device, all the development tools, that sort of thing. And he brought on board a number of people in key positions to kind of round out that group.
Dude, yeah.
Still, just an internal project at Microsoft that wasn't something.
Can you imagine if the Xbox actually ended up being shaped like that, like an actual X?
They themselves
Wild, man.
But the very fact that Microsoft was considering coming into the
Where would the disc go?
was a big deal.
It could potentially be a bad thing if Microsoft decides they're going to launch like basically a home PC, branded a game console, and put a bunch of PC games on it or something like that, which to those guys who are very smart guys at Microsoft but don't have a lot of context in the game business, it won't happen. And
Yeah.
so we felt a lot of
To
responsibility.
an extent, though, it kind of did.
And the response from the gaming community is encouraging.
When we went up to publishers and developers is that we've been kind of secretly meeting with all these guys for months and months and months, refining the idea. You know, what do you guys think about this? Oh, that's a crazy idea. What do you think about that? Oh, that's great.
As push comes to shove, Gates makes a historical decision.
It was a meeting where Valentine's Day was a month before GDC, and it was a point at which we're going to announce it at GDC, or we're going to cancel this project because we're not going to be ready in time.
It was just the final time. It's like, look, you know, you have to say go or no go now.
Starting up a console and spending billions of dollars to enter a new market
That's
is
true.
a difficult undertaking for any company, even a company the size of Microsoft.
Yep.
So we come into this meeting, it's scheduled to run from 4 to 6 o'clock on Valentine's Day. And Bill is just like immediately on the attack. But what do you mean it won't work in Windows? Oh, did we forget to tell you that part?
And you find yourself sitting in a room with Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer, and Steve Ballmer is right here, like, you know, the sweat's in his forehead saying, oh, you're gonna lose all our money!
We all have dinner reservations, and we're in big trouble because it's Valentine's Day and we're not home and the time is going by. And then in the last 5 minutes, the meeting just like turned around like 180 degrees. And you know, I don't know if Bill and Steve had this planned the whole time. And all of a sudden, they're all looking around at each other. We gotta do this. We gotta do this. And they're all getting excited, which is fun to be part of.
In March of 2000, Bill Gates stands on stage at the Game Developers Conference and announces
Yeah, and man, that's another thing. Putting together a game console, like they already said it, but like it bears repeating, it's expensive. A lot of people want a new Sega console. Dude, do you have any idea how much that would cost? Like, Sega has been downsizing for the last 20 years. They've been getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Alright? And a lot of the people who made Sega special, who made it Sega back then, they aren't there anymore. They've moved on to other projects or retired. So yeah, like, you know, plug and plays are great, and I'm happy with those. We don't need another Dreamcast. What we need are better games for the stuff we have now. That's my hot take on it. We don't need more consoles. We just need better games.
They suspected.
On announcing the Xbox,
Yeah!
a lot of
With the
things.
rack.
There's the future of console gaming. This is a huge milestone for us.
All they have to do now is accomplish everything they said they could.
Boy, I remember thinking, what have we gotten ourselves into? You know, once the product was finally approved, and there were absolutely no other reviews or approvals processes. Once Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer said, look, you know, this is it, we're not looking back, then the really hard work came in. Every assumption that we had, every plan had to be tested, and it was challenging.
You have this giant company behind you, Microsoft behind you, right? You get Microsoft, like, going in a direction, you better be sure it's the right direction, right? So we started feeling like, wow, we better get this right, otherwise it could potentially really screw up the industry.
That's true.
There was a lot of skepticism about, you know, were we really serious about doing this? Was there ever even going to be a console? There was skepticism about whether we would be able to hit our launch date, whether the performance would be what we said it would be, whether it would in fact be easy to program. At every step along the way, there was a constant proving process. We had to show games very early because we needed to demonstrate what the game was going to be. We had to show that it wasn't a PC.
You know, we built the system for developers. There is nobody out there who wouldn't tell you the NVIDIA chip was the hottest thing in the world. Nobody.
All consoles are essentially computers. There's a processor, there's a graphics chip, there's an audio chip. All the things that you see in a PC are evident in a console, but they're very different. They're very focused on a very specific thing, on gaming.
And sometimes it's not what's on the inside, but the outside that counts. In January 2001, the public gets its first look at the controller and industrial design of the Xbox.
Of course, we didn't want the Xbox to look uncool. We wanted it to look powerful. There were a lot of design studies. One of the things that the enthusiast press was the controller. Some people didn't mind the fact that the original controller, which they called Duke, was bigger. But I think to a lot of the gamers, they just kind of felt that it was just a little too big when they subsequently gone with the S-type controller, which they developed for Japan, which was definitely better.
As the launch date approaches, Microsoft's marketing machine shifts into high gear.
Microsoft faced this huge dilemma with how they were going to position themselves in the market. Do we brand it Xbox, but do we have Microsoft on the box? Do we use Bill Gates? Is Bill Gates liked by gamers? Isn't he? So I think they had a huge consumer marketing identity crisis that they sort of needed to address right away.
Anticipation builds on November 12, 2001 in Times Square.
I remember walking across the street from the WWF place over to the Toys R Us to get ready for the midnight thing. Bill was there and a couple other people, and Xbox is just everywhere. Up on the lights, every billboard in Times Square, all the...
That must have been crazy, man. Like, I would love to be there.
It was just... I don't know, it's one of those...
It's a big old Xbox party. What's up?
At 12:01 a.m., Bill Gates presents the first Xbox to a customer who had been waiting for hours outside.
That's just one of those moments in your life that you're just glad to be part of.
But Seamus has other things to worry about.
Well, I was super nervous because I was going to propose to my wife that night. That was the thing I was really nervous about. And I had arranged for Bill Gates to hold my engagement ring, right? So he had my engagement ring in pocket, and Bill had called me that afternoon and said, what if she says no?
Bro.
Well, do you have a backup plan in case she says no? And so I'm thinking, God, she's going to say no? Because I had no doubts up until that moment. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, don't do that to the guy, man.
She'll probably say yes.
She'll probably say yes.
Frankly,
I don't know, man.
the launch of the Xbox is almost anticlimactic. For me, the launch was all about getting on my knee and
Yeah.
having the most fabulous woman on earth say she'd marry me.
That's awesome.
With a successful console launch and an engagement, Blackley has achieved everything he has hoped for.
Heck yeah.
The fate of the Xbox is far from certain.
This is an Xbox! It's the #1!
With the Xbox successfully launched in time for Christmas 2001, the future of the system now lies in the hands of the developers.
Well, I think the #1 thing that we wanted to achieve was for people who got an Xbox to just be blown away.
Mission accomplished, man. It's an awesome console. I like it. Still.
That has to be the ultimate.
Like, it's probably my second favorite console ever.
They're really excited about Xbox.
The first Christmas, all the hardcore gamers are going to go out and they're going to buy it because they got it. It's new. It's exciting. There's a lot of press about it. They got to see if it really lives up to the hype.
But you don't ever take it home and open it up and have it. And that actually happened with a couple of other console launches, right? People got excited.
Oh, hey, what's up, Morgan? I didn't see you there.
Take it home, and of course,
It's going good, man. Thank you for stopping in and saying hello. I appreciate
It's
you.
not so great, and you're like, whoa, they want $300.
Oh, that was awesome.
They have to.
Love to get my hands on an Xbox. I want to get the newer one though, because I got some digital games on it, and like that's something I will say they've been really good about is honoring the previous generations. While not nearly as complete as I might like, I understand they can't do certain games,
Because everybody has a lot of units out
but yeah,
consoles.
they're probably the best in terms of
Generation of games that come
just
into that install
allowing you to
base.
play games that are backwards compatible. You know.
So what happens in later years is really kind of dependent on the quality of the games. That is something that's just a very magical and very difficult thing to predict in advance.
And then it's a real creative contest, right? Then it's not about the specs of the hardware. It's not about how cool your TV campaign is. You know, it's not about any of those things. It's about which games you have and are your fans happy or not. So I would argue the real worker is next.
If you got a great game and it's only available on Xbox and it's the thing that everybody's excited about, then they're going to go out and buy Xboxes.
Microsoft's development team, Bungie, provides the must-have game for the
Yeah.
season.
Halo was awesome.
I love Halo. And I hate first-person shooters, but I like Halo. That's how good it was.
I played a lot of games in my life, and this is a game I could just sit and play and have a great time. So I really felt pretty confident that we were going to be able to come out and really surprise people.
Despite fierce competition, Microsoft manages to sell 1.5 million consoles and nearly 5 million Xbox games by Christmas. Developers take advantage of the console's hardware abilities to create distinct and innovative games.
Camera! No! That means turn on the lights, idiot!
I'd have to say that right now my favorite game is a game from Microsoft Studios that just came out called...
Kung Fu Chaos!
It's a fighting game, but it's kind of a party game.
Yeah, they were really good about that too.
Craftsmanship going to it.
Especially once I got into the 360 era.
We had an idea about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It's just astounding.
In the fall of 2002, Xbox Live is launched.
We've been cooking this thing up from the get-go. 3 years ago when we conceived of Xbox, we wanted to bring it online. Online gaming is going to be the big next step in video gaming.
And a celebrity event is held.
These are always really fun parties.
Bring it on.
I'd love to go to one of those
I'm excited.
It's so exciting and really
press
impressive hand-eye coordination.
release celebrity party things.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Super fun. Great game.
Realistic. I think that's off the chain.
Yeah, I love good stuff. Get back.
Red Foreman. I'm gonna shove an Xbox up your ass.
In my mind, I connect the dots thinking about Xbox.
Even as the Xbox continues to succeed, preparations are made for a new system.
Go for it! We're deep in planning right now for the next version of Xbox.
This guy's serious.
Oh, this came out before the 360. Dang.
I spend more time right now
Little
on
did
Xbox
they
2
know.
than on Xbox One, if you can believe that. And part of that is because we got to do it right this time. We want to have enough time to make sure that we're not just insane at the end. And that we have the content portfolio really planned out, and that we have the games lined up, and that we have this machine that's not only going to be successful in the US, but can be successful everywhere in the world. And that's what's going on.
Although Kevin and Seamus have left to start their own development company, just taking a look back is sometimes the greatest reward.
It was a mixture because, on the one hand, it was really, really hard. But on the other hand, it was probably the best time I've ever had in my life because we were out doing what we wanted to do. Very few times do you get the opportunity to actually see kind of your, a dream that you had come together, and so many people come together to make it happen.
That is really cool.
To 1999, it's just unbelievable. I went to the Tokyo Game Show and there were giant Xbox banners everywhere, right? It's unbelievable. If you think back to 1999, think back to me and Kevin and Otto and Ted, 4 guys sitting in a room eating jelly beans. Come on, that's a wild ride. That's really
Pretty cool, man. Yeah.
So I guess for me personally, there's that. I can't really hold it to an absolute scale. It's really emotional. So it's just, it's nearly unbelievable.
That's awesome, man.
Xbox is the next generation of video gaming.
Alright, so we're going to call it here for today, y'all. I really appreciate you stopping in and saying hi. I love hanging out with you guys. We're going to do this again on Monday, obviously. You know, same time, same bat channel. Doing much of the same. Hanging out, watching nostalgic stuff on YouTube, chit-chatting around. So,